Is it ever excusable for us to not forgive someone who has offended us? Is there ever a time when we can be excused from withholding forgiveness from someone who has hurt us? Could we be excused for not forgiving the person who accidentally bumps into us? That seems like a pretty easy one to forgive. Could we ever be excused from the nameless and faceless person that runs into our car in the grocery parking lot, or maybe the church parking lot, and doesn't leave their name or phone number? Could we be excused for not forgiving them? That seems a little bit more difficult, but certainly not impossible. Could we ever be excused for not forgiving our brothers who flew planes into the World Trade Center 16 years ago this past week? Is it excusable to withhold forgiveness from the so-called mastermind behind that plot, Osama bin Laden? Are there times when we can be excused from forgiving our brothers and sisters? And that's essentially what Peter asks our Lord in the gospel today. Lord, how often must I forgive my brother? 7 times? And our Lord, in other words, says more. Peter, church, we are to forgive every single person, every single time. Not 7 times, 77 times. Every single person, every single time. But why? Why do we have to forgive every single person every single time? It seems insane. We do know that saying, once shame on you, twice shame on me. Every single person, every single time. Why? And our Lord gives us the why in the parable today. The parable of the master who forgave his servant the debt. But then what does that servant do? In turn, he goes and holds accountable one of his fellow servants and makes him pay back the debt. And of course, that master finds out, and we know that he was handed over to the torturers until he finally paid back the debt. But the key question is what the master puts before that servant. He says, should you not have had pity on your fellow servant as I had pity on you? Why must we forgive every single person? Every single time, or at least engage in that struggle of forgiveness? It is not because anyone deserves our forgiveness. It's certainly not because we're nice people. We are asked, we are expected to forgive every single person every single time because we ourselves have been forgiven every single time. Or at least we have had that opportunity every single time to be forgiven by God. Perhaps one of the greatest ways to learn forgiveness. Not just simply the forgiveness of the guy that runs into us on the street on accident, but the big ones. The big hurts, the big injustices, the big offenses. If we want to learn how to forgive, come and receive God's forgiveness. Because in a nutshell, what our Lord is asking us to do is forgive as He forgives. We are being called this weekend to forgive as God forgives us. And where do we learn God's forgiveness? We learn it in many, many ways, but in particular and most especially through the sacrament of reconciliation, through the sacrament of confession. We utilize that amazing sacrament not just to receive forgiveness, but because it teaches us how to forgive as God forgives, to forgive every single person, every single time. Brothers and sisters, our Lord lays down the gauntlet this weekend. There is no longer an excuse to withhold forgiveness. We are called to forgive as God forgives.